I'm the executive director at Sensedia. It's great to have you with us, and I would like for you to give a warm welcome. Firstly, to Karen Machado. She is the executive manager at Banco do Brasil. She was chosen, she was elected as the professional of the year on the Open Summit Awards last year. She's a journalist, she studied business, a great CV. She worked with marketing, payment, investor relationship, and credit at the bank. So it's great to have you, Karen. I would also like to invite Raquel Ximenes. She is the open banking executive. She's the open banking executive for Banco do Nordeste. She is the leader of the entire open finance part with us. It's great to have you. And I would also like to invite Roberto. He is a tech executive. Roberto has a great career in several technology companies, BV, Via, Cogna, and several others. So we have a great diversity so that we can have a good conversation. Welcome to all of you. On the keynote speak, Marcelo and Kleber talked about that. So he said, I see open business everywhere. Almost all business areas and industries are somehow going towards this open business and not necessarily having open data and just available. It's open in the sense of partnerships, businesses, exchanging data between industries, and focusing heavily on the customer journey. So, we would like to talk about that with you now. So, Karen, I would like to start with you because I know that at Banco do Brasil, you're doing a great work in open finance. We have all the regulatory issues, but regulatory is just one part, right? Maybe it's the cherry on top of several other things that are involved in this open journey with partnerships, banking as a service, embedded finance, and all of that. So, can you talk about that experience and what you're doing at the bank? Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Fábio, for the invitation. It's great to be here. I want to give you congratulations because the event is amazing and it's actually bigger than Taylor Swift's concert. So, I want to tell you about what we're doing. When we talk about open, based on the open finance regulation, we look at the regulatory open finance. But for us at the bank, it was always the first step, but not the finish line. I'm going to talk about three main things when I think about open business. So, open finance in the regulatory point of view, it enables a lot of business models and a lot of business opportunities. We have been using the data that is shared by the customers for their own gain. To review credit models, to have contextualized offers, to have more precise advisory. But we also look at payment. So, payment initiation is a tool that is going to be super important. And it's something that we're still going to talk about on the panel, which is the fight over customer ownership. So, the possibility of the customer being able to make transactions from any app. And when we talk about open, it's truly a lot of possibilities. So, having transactions from apps that are not even financial apps. So, it's also an important opportunity that we have been exploring with solutions for investments or paying out loans, and how we can have an open scenario with this tool in other contexts. And two other strategies do complement open business when we look at banks. So, banking as a service. It's an opportunity of offering financial services in different ecosystems and different platforms. We already have several APIs that are ready to bring these financial services into other environments. 8 of them today are already in our developer portal, and we have a channel to reach our developer, to have sandboxes and forums, because We believe that in this world that is more open and more connected, the customer of financial services or customers in general are going to choose where they have the best service or the context that they are in to hire that service. So it makes sense to have cost efficiency and being where the customer is. This banking strategy, this banking as a service strategy makes a lot of sense. And just so I can move on to our colleagues here, it's also opening our ecosystem and our platform so that other companies can expose their own products. Today, we have one of the best rated apps in the financial industry with over 20 million accesses a month. So we have a huge audience, and it makes a lot of sense for a lot of industries. And that strategy, the Shopping BB offers over 100 sellers of non-financial services, so it goes beyond banking, so that in that environment where the customer goes often, so we check our account, we have PIX transactions. So when we have a safe environment, we can also consume other products. So, in this open business world, when we look at the financial industry, those three are important: open finance, regulatory, and not, the banking as a service, and the open platform. So, Banco do Brasil is exploring all three. Amazing, and we will get back to that a little bit, Karen, as well. So, Raquel, Banco Nordeste is a funding bank, but there's a lot of innovation happening. I wanted to talk about those specific terms as well. Frustrated dream management, I think it is, but we'll get there. She has a very interesting management model. So, can you talk to us a little bit about that? How is this journey for you? Your characteristic, it's an S1 bank that's very big and important in Brazil. First of all, good morning, everyone. Just to talk about what Karen said, it's my first time, it's my debut at the event, so I hope to be invited again. But congratulations to the event, and Sensedia, thank you so much. I thought it was open wine that we were having here today because I saw a cup downstairs, but no, it's wine. It's not wine, okay? It's water. I thought it was going to be wine when I saw the cup here at the table. But it's a challenge, like you said. Banco do Nordeste is a funding and development bank. We have a very noble um, core goal because we are dealing with the northeast region in Brazil, which has different conditions and difficult conditions at times. But we are always looking at innovation and some improvements towards the development of that area. It's a challenge because our target audience, we need to have a work of culture related to the business, but we have interesting initiatives towards that. I will talk a little bit about open finance, which is my area. So we do have a challenge that is quite big related to open culture. And when we talk about culture, is the data driven culture, so having the decision making process based on data, but also going towards IT a little bit. We were just talking about that with my IT team yesterday. It's the customer identity management. So, how do I bring this customer identity? How do I show the customer that they're going into the bank, they're having operations without having to segment that into 10 apps, 5 different segments? How do I do that thinking about technology within the institution? So I think that this is a challenge that we've been trying to find related to innovation. Talking about not only open finance, but open as a whole, we do have products, and I think that when we try telling business, and sometimes we go too much far into technology, we have solidary microcredit in our bank. Today, our bank has the biggest solidary microcredit in Latin America. We have a group of people that get together to request credit, and it's a small credit, but it's solidary. So all the participants there. So we have the bakery owner, someone from the market, or a cook. So they have the microcredit, and somehow, without the real use of technology, we work with open business, and this makes Banco do Nordeste the biggest in the guided microcredit in the segment. We also have card products and we have financing or loans. And in that card, we have partnerships. We talked about on the last panel, they talked a lot about partnerships. So we have direct partnerships with the establishments. So through those partnerships with the cards, the customer is able to make the acquisition of tractors or heavy machinery. So I tried to go a little bit away from open finance. We have these other initiatives going on. But I think that the biggest challenge that we're facing today is the data driven and having the data driven culture for the decision making process. Businesses being managed and offered based on data that come from open finance. So there was a new survey from Banking Technology from 2022. It was actually in first place for the use of data of open finance. That was number one. In 2023, it was the same thing. So that's one of the biggest challenges. Yes, some people talked about the data in that survey, and data is the main challenge. But I know of banks that are able to leverage conversion of specific products. I won't say exactly the bank or the product, but 30% conversion by using the open finance data well. So you can do a lot with that data and the right combination. And also with the advance of AI, as we see, data is more and more necessary to feed those machines and then see other results. I forgot to tell you, at some point, we're going to have a QR code on the screen. You can scan the QR code and you can send questions on the site that you're going to see. So I forgot about it, and I received the questions here, and if we have the time, we're going to get through some of them. Roberto, you have general experience in the financial market, in sales, and on this scenario of open partnerships, some of them are more advanced or less advanced, right? So, what was your perception? Can you give us a good point of view? Like in that sector, we saw a lot of advancements. In others, we don't really had the opportunity. So you're going to be in another industry soon. We're going to know about that. Thank you so much for the invitation, Fábio, and the whole Sensedia team. It's great to have two amazing people in this topic and seeing friends as well. I can say very surely that today in the business world, there's no isolation. Everyone is working in an ecosystem, whether it's local, Latin America, or global. Today, banks want to become or integrate with marketplace, go into the health segment, into the education segment, and exploring other ways of creating revenue. Or retail e-commerces that want to have their own credit cards and going into other markets. So this ecosystem has been strengthened in a very open way. Today, we don't have any big companies that don't have new revenue lines that are different from your core business because you're fighting for LTV, customer acquisition costs. So that's how you're going to scale your operation and improve that. I see that on retail and electronic commerce, some level of maturity is good. Banks as well, I think over the last 2, 3 years, they recovered a lot. Banks today, when you go into a bank, you realize that the amount of products that are offered that sometimes are not core, they're much bigger than it used to be 5 or 6 years ago. And there's another angle when we try to see that the health and education markets that are a little bit delayed in that journey, they are now paying attention to that. The big education areas have most of the students in finance initiation. So isn't that a great period to bring someone into banking relationship and starting a long process, a long relationship? When the bank does a good work with the customer, they have a very long-term relationship. If they screw up, the customer will quickly go into another institution. So I see that a line of maturity for retail and banks, they are ahead and they can tell great stories. When we talk about health and education and other sectors, they are now in an acceleration period to get into the game. Great. Karen, you talked a little bit about banking as a service. There are studies that show that this is a great opening market. And I wanted to ask you if you agree and if you have clear benefits that you can share with us. And this also shows that, especially on the financial market, you usually have more control of the journey and the experience. So I'm going to bring it into my app or my super app. I actually use an investment app, and in there, I can actually uh, put gas into my car and pay for that. So you go a little bit further away from that and you distribute your product into other areas that you didn't imagine, but they are now related to your bank. So tell us a little about that. What do you think? Do you think it's good, and what kind of return have you had?
Well, there's no doubt that that's actually a huge business now. We are talking about 9 to 12 billion for this market only in the next 5 years. So we have seen a lot of studies uh, talking about the movements from the banks structuring banking as a service, just as Banco do Brasil. So nowadays, the core of this service shows that there is of course demand and also people getting ready to meet this demand. So yes, of course I agree with you, it is a changing paradigm, because I mean, if we look at 10 15 years ago, it was only natural that the bank only had a relationship with its own his own bank with credit, and there was this fidelity, this loyalty. But right now, it's very easy to open a digital account, to ask to request a credit card, and even use it at the same time, because there are virtual credit cards. So we have now a bigger fight for this loyalty of the customer. So now it's pretty clear to all the banks that in this scenario, part of something is better than nothing. And what do I mean by that? Okay, if I am not going to provide all the financial services to the customer, maybe because the other bank has a better customer experience, or maybe because that bank has products that were designed or specifically tailored for their work, or because their family all have the same bank account, whatever. It's better to be a part of that. I mean, to offer a product that is transparent, instead of having nothing. So for the majority of the banks, in addition to being an opportunity to having some revenue, it's also an opportunity for efficiency, because we need to have the compliance to regulations and to have these operations. So escalating that, scaling that up is not so difficult. So it's just to have an extra product that I can offer and also make it efficient to offer that to third parties. At Banco do Brasil, we have working on our structure to be able to serve this market. I believe there are some stages that the banks have to go through. And right now we have been focusing on platforms and companies that are currently our customers, but we are also getting ready to attend the market as a whole. But I mean, it starts with having a good communication and a good interface with the developers. I already mentioned that we have a portal to for developers alone. We already have over 30,000 companies with some type of application being produced there. So we have this capability to evolve, but it also demands a different type of business structure that is not exactly used to be our core, which was to do all range of services for our customers. And I think it was very interesting to see the previous panel, because they were talking about, okay, you have the business as your customer, but you also have the developers as your customers. So you have to take a look at both customers and think about, okay, how to have a platform and how to be able to serve the new platform. And it also changes the paradigms that says that the final customer, is no longer going to have contact with your brand. And then you also need to cater to your developer. So this talks as this goes as to talk about how the banking can be service. Yes, and Fabio, I also would like to add that not only about banks being impacted, but we are talking about bringing the customers to our portfolio with the same point of view. So the majority of the banks are used to, okay, when they have a customer, they have that branch, that manager to handle specifically that customer to be, closer to their home, physically speaking. And this is not the movement we have been seeing. Okay, the customer is a client right now, but maybe 5 days from now, someone is stalking him via open finance, because we're always joking around that, because this is an opportunity for all the banks to stalk their customers in other institutions, other banks. So this is the impact that I also have in my legacy, to have to change the majority of our systems that are branch oriented for that customer, for that relationship manager, for example. It also changing this concept that we have the customer in our portfolio, in a very fixed way, in a very fixed box. Yes, and if I may add on that, yes, go ahead. Well, I really liked you saying the shifting paradigm, because it goes beyond Raquel. Nowadays, the customers, they don't even feel they are customers to that bank. They are basically consuming some content, some educational content in a platform. So the bank is transparent there. So if you think of banking as a service, you as the provider of that service, you have to be ready to offer the support that is not going to look like you. It doesn't have your label on it. So when I use my credit at the platform of Estácio, which is a university, I don't know that Banco do Brasil is behind that. No, I am the customer of Estácio, of the university. So there are new challenges, and then there are new demands, because this relationship with the bank is going to be more and more transparent. Exactly. Yes, this relationship between the educational industry and the bank is something that to me is very old fashioned. I still receive my bills on my mail, for example. But this is something that can change. Okay, and now, Roberto, it's important to explore that type of challenge now, not only the shifting culture, but also the technical challenges. So I would like to explore this part about the challenges now. Okay, so we are going to open business. I am not going to win the whole cake, but only a slice right now. So it's important to discuss the challenges. Yes, this is actually something that is always on my mind, because the APIs are now a structure that has to be discussed for every business. And we have been evolving with this issue, with this subject inside the companies. But when it comes to system architecture that don't deliver the objectives of long terms when it comes to APIs. And the previous panel was really great to discuss that, because first of all, if you don't have a department to manage that, the chances of you losing your API catalog is huge. It's basically inevitable. There are some companies that have more than one technology structure, or maybe shadow IT or something like that. I mean, if you don't have governance over that, you will have extra expenses. You are having more risks when it comes to your strategy. So we say, okay, there's a problem with this API, and sometimes the areas don't even know who's responsible for this API, and this is a huge problem. So there's a whole structure that has to be governed when it comes to that. Who are going to be responsible for that? Who are going to make the who's going to make the decisions? So who is going to make the decisions? We're also talking about observability. We are still evolving on that. We're still learning literally the context of this observability inside the business, because this is definitely going to impact our business. Also, cybersecurity. So how to make sure that the development of those APIs or that context is secure enough So architecture, observability, and cybersecurity are the biggest concerns when it comes to API management, which is the foundation, which is the base for the whole discussion of digital business. M&A processes, for example, when one company buys another, the digital due diligence process oftentimes doesn't consider the APIs that they are buying. Oftentimes, they are only thinking that this is a quick integration. And the bad news is if you don't do your due diligence and think about, okay, what is the integration strategy going to be like, things are definitely going to be a challenge because this investment is huge. So you have to always think about your business architecture versus the one that you are acquiring, and think what is the easiest way, the less traumatic way to integrate that. And as a final angle, a lot of companies are modernizing. So many legacy systems, are a reality of many people inside this room, myself included. Uh, we even have a saying that God made the world in 7 days because He didn't have any legacy systems to handle. So we are always have to decouple services and create APIs and gradually modernizing the company. Yes, and this is actually a long journey. And I now want to talk about the miracle management. Yes. Yes, we were talking. We had a call before this event because we were talking about different managements, and one of them was the miracle management. And to perform miracles, we only need one extra week. But when we talk about open business and challenges, well, the list goes long. So it starts with stop observing what my competitor or my peer or other banks are doing. So not look at it. But on the other hand, is to look at it and to want to do the same. So to think that because that company is going to bank as a service, then I also have to do that because I'm just going to surf the same wave. And I mean, it is a challenge on itself, on its own, to be able to look at the market and to align my applicability in my institution. So that's the first point. And now going specifically to IT, because I'm only thinking about business and we can hurt some egos. But one thing that I mentioned in the first answer that I gave you was thinking about the user and identity management, but not only the technological part of that, about the profiles, about when someone goes to active director. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the management of the identity of the customer. So he knows that okay, now you have a company, so you have to download a different application. But if you are in the agribusiness, the application is different. Or if you want a credit card, is a different application. I mean, no, the customer wants to have an identity. They want to input their ID number and have one single app to resolve everything. So this is a challenge on its own. We are always talking about customer experience. This is a very trendy topic, a hot topic, but we're not always thinking about that. We're more like thinking about their money experience, of what's the revenue they're bringing. And I think that the government is trying to do that with GovBR. The government is doing that. They have this profile. And you can focus on the city experience in all in one website. So this is the challenge, to be able to work with the identity management of the customer in a transparent way. Yes, and even talking about this identity again, it could be an enabler for us to talk about OpenX, to have many different industries coexisting and allowing for the customer to share information between industries. So the management of the identity is something, I mean, someone has to solve that in an accurate way. Yes, yes, we are already giving you ideas and showing you opportunities. Yes, that's an opportunity, no doubt. And talking about experience and data and cultural shift, we are now surfing the wave of ChatGPT. They launched a few months ago the OpenAI Store, which is basically a group of apps that you can install on ChatGPT and use the specialization of this app for some prompts that you may do. So, for example, credit simulation, travel planning. So instead of responding it, ChatGPT moves that to another system and do that on the background using APIs and different platforms. So it is a trend that this ecosystem to be focused on this type of experience, which of course in reality tends to be more natural. And there is this disruption trend because in the same way as we use internet for our apps that's based on icons, of course it was a disruption back then, but not necessarily is the most natural option right now, because to access an application to do anything, for example, a bank app or insurance app or anything, it's actually kind of bureaucratic because we have to click on it, we have to take a few pictures, we have to request reimbursements, or so for example, if I want to request a reimbursement, we have to take a picture of the receipt and those types of things. And this OpenAI store shows a trend to replace these types of apps, which of course is what's being done because they are just calling APIs all the time in the platform. So having APIs makes more sense now than ever. So how do you see this movement? Do you think this is going to be adopted? What's the timeline for the full adoption of this new model? I mean, maybe in the future we are. Of course, we are not future analysts. Yes, I'm not going to be technical about that, okay? But let me just say that the the adoption of any type of disruption, which may be a market disruption or a company disruption, because I mean, sometimes the market has something that the company still doesn't. But any type of disruption is directly associated to your appetite of risk appetite. So we always have this concern of cybersecurity with fraud. So we are very mindful of any type of technological disruption. But for the technical part, I'm going to let to give him the floor. Well, there are benefits, of course, but there are some rather complex problems the companies have to adapt to this type of business, to interact with other businesses, or maybe even to rethink or their own journeys. So, for example, one of the hot topics nowadays is how AI is consuming company APIs and who is actually paying for that, because the learning models are trying to feed this generation. So last week, Reddit actually blocked that because of the costs. So how can you actually adjust your investment and your market power so you are not outside of the wave, but you're not also, running on fumes or having negative results, and how can we better connect with this type of context? So we can see that the huge technology companies are now very worried with that. The L and LM models are struggling with that. So under the perspective of the market, you mentioned connectors, and this is a journey that's not going to end. You said that yourself. Purchase health insurance or travels. I mean, all the time we are going to discuss it with AI. So again, we go back to the identity. Okay, so how can we make that happen? You are a person for each business, but when you connect to this ecosystem with the AI, You cannot be Roberto for one company and another Roberto for another one. You're going to be the same person. We're always talking about identity management, how to have a blockchain to control that, Web 3.0 to resolve this identity problem. However, we still haven't addressed that, and there's a huge opportunity to solve that, as you said yourself. Yes, just like you said, we are still learning, but I can see two big possibilities building on what Roberto said. I see the possibility of the companies using this technology and continuing to fight to keep the interface with the customers, but now linking that with the bank as a service, where we are sometimes transparent. With these new functionalities, new applications are going to come up, and we need to be ready to work on them, to act on them. Otherwise, we lose relevance. But maybe the higher cost is to not be an option at all, to not be on the shelf for that application. So there are two possible ways to go from here. The companies are going to get ready to have their data bodies organized and able to be accessed at a competitive cost, but also using this technology internally and trying to keep fighting to have contact with the customer. Yes, and also I want to add that about the data intelligence. I was talking to Karen yesterday. There are some institutions that are releasing a lot of calls for open finance to bring everything back to me, and I don't know what to do with this data, but I just want to have this data for having the data.
And I don't even have an idea of what I'm going to do with that data. So, business intelligence is something that is going to be important for your company. Bringing this business intelligence into the company is important, but I need to know how to use it. Does it make sense for me to be in this open world and only having the data, not knowing how exactly I can use it internally? And we go to that same idea that I mentioned, looking at my peers, but understanding the applicability within my institution. So I think that the differential of using all these disruptive technologies and ChatGPT itself is understanding how to use the data that I will now have on hand. Having the data on hand, we know that now we have the open world and it's going to go wherever we can take it, but business intelligence applied to the data is the differential. In this case, Raquel, abundance isn't always a success, but efficiency, it is. Yeah, because there's a lot to refine and perfect. Yeah, we don't even have a predictive model. It's like, let's take everything and then I'll see what I can do. And no one wants to see that cost. And then on next year's budget, you're discussing with the CFO why you had an increase in cost, and it's never a good discussion. When we look at regulatory open finance, it's a discussion that hasn't advanced. So if we think about open X and open other ecosystems, we need to talk about that because these are costs for everyone, for those who are consuming and for those who are also transmitting the information. I think on the previous panel, they talked about the importance of the architect. On David's panel, was it David? Sorry, I don't know. Was it David? Yes, it was David. He talked a little bit about the importance of the PO, and the product manager, but I think the data mining professional and data intelligence professional are always going to be really important on this open scenario. Yes, because one of the journeys that the years we've had and what we saw with ChatGPT, I did this. I actually got a PDF that was a PDF exported from my internet banking. We do that all the time online. So I exported it and I put it into ChatGPT 4.0, which is a paid version. It's $20 a month. And I say, read the PDF. And he says, this is a bank statement from this date. You have this amount in your checking account. You have APIX or water bills or whatever. And I say, okay, so tell me how much I spent on water. And I asked him that. So now let me see a graph. So there's another plugin that generates the graphs. Now, let's do a simulation if I want to buy a car and pay max $2,000 a month. So ChatGPT accessed another plugin and did the credit simulation. So this journey is beautiful, but uploading a PDF is a little bit weird. So what's the point? We have the open finance APIs. Today we don't have any regulation talking about third parties, so an app like ChatGPT can access the API. But are we going to get there? Am I going to, at some time, allow ChatGPT to go into my account, read my bank statement via API? This technological structure already exists. We would just have to connect those dots, and from there, I can play with my data in there and to combine with ChatGPT and have that. I don't know if we have any bank managers, they just left as you were speaking, okay? ChatGPT is going to be my financial advisor from now on. Well, I see it is a possible path. I think that regulation needs to address this, but I would like to remind you that there's a lot going on with non regulated open finance. On Banco do Brasil, we have a great example because in 2017, we had the first partnership for open finance in Brazil with Conta Azul. And it's similar to what you said. We didn't have the intelligence of ChatGPT to classify and say what the expenses were, but the customer could say, okay, I can share my bank statement, and then they would have their financial management done on Conta Azul. So this can happen from a market initiative, regardless of regulation, and I think it would be positive for us to have security standards, monitoring, and accountability. So I think that we will get there. And the challenge for companies is going to be having that internally in a more efficient way than an outside application. So you don't need to take your data from Banco do Brasil to another application. So me and my manager or my AI manager, I can give you that same advisory. Yeah, and that has a long way to go, right? I don't know if ChatGPT specifically, but we're talking about the future. So the central bank has been showing or hinting that they are really open to that. So it started with PIX transactions. That was a big disruption. Today we don't live anymore. It's almost the end of debit cards and some other payment methods. But we had open finance, and now we have the initiative of digital real. So we go into a blockchain world, possibilities with smart accounts. So the central bank has been hinting towards integration, market opening, crypto, and looking at the whole context. So, as Karen said, I don't know if specifically using this technology because we have something regulated. Yes, because we can't go against the market. We didn't have a digital currency, and now with more crypto abroad, we saw okay, we need to regulate and structure. So, today we have over 100 institutions participating in a pilot project of digital real or digital currency so that that can be a reality. Of course, with a control that we may not have on blockchain, but we do have this bias. So, yes, I think we will be seeing news that are quite disruptive. We have one of the most mature banking systems in the world. So, to what Karen said, I agree in parts. And I think that the banks and financial institutions by themselves are going to create AI elements to be able to deliver this value to all customers. I have no question about it. Our banking model is a model that is very mature. It's a reference globally talking about credit risks and the way that we do implementation and management. So at some point, this AI is going to be an important and strategic asset and an actor within financial institutions to deliver that same value to customers. Other than AI, we need to work internal intelligence as well, right? So people's intelligence, cultural intelligence, we often, I know this is a technology event and we talk a lot about that. I had technology in my life because I didn't want to deal with people. You would deal more with technology, and I know that that's not the case. But going back to data intelligence, when you reach that with the information, there's nothing good for me in knowing that the customer has an infinity credit card in another bank if my process doesn't allow for them to have the same limit or a better limit than what they have at another bank or a better product and service because I need to strengthen my internal process or my internal culture. So sometimes we talk a lot about technology, data intelligence, artificial intelligence, but the intelligence of process optimization and changing processes to also support this open everything for me to be able to maintain the customer. So we talked about data consent, but it's hard to maintain that consent because it has to be renewed time and time again because I need to offer products and services that will justify the sharing of the data. And I will only be able to do that if I optimize my processes, my products, and offer products and services that are better for that customer. So we also go through that change in process and culture. Exactly, because to apply artificial intelligence or get insight from the data, someone has to have the hypotheses and questioning so that that can happen. We don't have an AI that is able to understand that entire context and make decisions on their own. So we do need someone behind it to make it happen. We're reaching the end of our time. I have one question from our audience. We have 5 minutes to reply, so let's do it. Well, being a bank with more financial agencies or physical agencies in number, do you think they're going to be reused or are they going to be closed in the future? We have a lot of agencies in the Northeast, but I think Banco do Brasil has the most physical agencies in Brazil. Well, I'll start and I'll go over to you. And the same is valid for retail, of course, for physical stores. So we have a trend in the most basic service for them to go to a self-service model for apps that are less complex. But I don't see people giving up on human connection and human service. We see that our stores today, that today you don't have a lot of stock. So you don't have a lot of product stock because people are going there to see, but they would rather buy online and get it at home. But a lot of the time I want to touch, I want to see how it's going to fit me. There's only white here, but okay, I'll order at home the red or the other color that I want. So us in Banco do Brasil, we believe in phygital service. So having the option of how the customer wants to have their service. So if it's digital, they need to have a good app. They need to have services that have good performance, having good monitoring of the data to make sure we have a hyper personalized service. But we also believe in having our information manager, having physical service that is equally prepared so that the customer can go and look them in the eye and have the counsel that they want. Sometimes for financial products, when you have an issue, usually it's a big problem and they at someone and say, can you solve it? Or my card was stolen or cloned. What's going to happen? There was an issue with my car. So I think they're not going to annul each other, they're complementary. Talking about the northeast area of Brazil, we don't have agencies everywhere in Brazil. In the northeast, we have them in all states, but some other areas we don't have agencies. But I don't believe we're not going to have physical agencies in the future. Like Karen said, Silvio Meira also talks a lot about phygital. So we shouldn't confuse people who are born digitally, so they're digital natives. They want that access. They were born that way, so they want to sign a contract digitally. They want all transactions digitally. They want support from 8 to midnight. They don't want to have to go to the store. So let's not confuse those people with those people who still have a profile of having relationships. When we talk about agencies, and we have a lot of them in the countryside, they need the relationship manager because there's a specific thing related to trust and credibility in the relationship with the customer in our area. So that manager is like my doctor. They are the one that is going to give me counsel. They will tell me what to do with my money. So this role will remain. And of course, processes are going to be automatized. We're going to remove the ATMs. I'm not going to tell you what we're going to change them with, but it's going to be like shared ATMs. We're going to have partnerships with shared networks like Banco do Brasil or other partners, but I think that the physical point is not going to be gone. And for us, this is so true that the data of open finance today is available in our agencies because we know that the customers that want to go to the agency, they need to have the same type of care that they would have in the digital area. So I give the same condition with automatized offers and with digital marketing so that my manager can say, I see you have a loan with the other bank. How do you know that I have a loan with another bank? Well, I have all your data here, you guys. But there's another point here. Agreeing with the girls, of course, the company sector needs that. So, like financing to buy a house. So, it can all change, but right now that's what it is. But for individuals, some people didn't start their life with digital. They want to go, they want to have coffee, they want to have checkbooks, and we still have that. When we go to retail, retail is very specific in that. Recently, there was a study done in supermarkets saying that the average ticket is 15% higher than online. So when someone is at the store, they have a better impulse to buy. And in big supermarkets, there was a change in that market. So it's either a very small market like OXXO or small little stores, but the big networks, they work as a distribution center to be able to have the last mile done quickly. So you want to do a food retail, you want to buy it at noon and 2 p.m., you have all your shopping. The delivery didn't come from another city, it came from the store closest to your house. So we can't break that model because in Brazil we have a very specific topic that we have one of the highest logistical costs in the world. We have no railways. None of that works. We only have the regular highways. So in big centers, the physical structure gives you a logistic capillarity in the market. So for clothes, I can tell you because I worked in the clothes retailing area, there's a big percentage of people that if they don't try the clothes on, they are not going to buy online. It's a huge barrier and it's not going to change. Yeah, you want to test drive the car, right? You don't do it online. You have to go and drive the car. Yeah, luxury cars. If people buy online, they're super rich. You're going to find one or another, but most people want to drive the car first. So we're going to have a transformation, a slower transformation in the market, but things are not going to change, in my opinion. Well, we had a great conversation. I know we could stay here for hours and hours, but our time has run out. I have loved talking to you. I want to thank Karen, Roberto, and Raquel for being here. Thank you so much for being with us in this panel. And let's hear it for our panel.